Jackie, thank you so much for joining me for the Formidable Podcast. It's so great to be here at your lovely home.
Thank you for being here.
No, it's great. So I know you were relatively early to the AI space. I mean, especially considering all of the noise that we're hearing these days about AI. So I'm hoping you can kind of give us a little background and how you came to found this company.
Sure. And, I'm probably a little bit of an improbable AI founder because I do not code. I don't have a strong technology background. So maybe that will be inspiring for those of you who have, ideas for startups. But I started out, I've been a litigator for, over a decade. I started out my career in big law. I was an appellate attorney in government. And then I was in-house counsel for several years before I started my company. And the last role I had when I was in-house counsel, I was advising the data science team of a nonprofit that was trying to bring, sort of data to courts and government agencies about child welfare cases. So that's kind of where I started just like becoming more fluent about what, data science is. And I started learning about AI. And then around the same time, sort of how I got this idea for my company was I was working on a pro bono asylum case. So I was representing a mother and her toddler in an asylum court. Jeez. And, very high stakes. Like if we lost, they would be, sent back to Honduras and likely, murdered. So it was very terrifying sort of to take on. But I had written this massive, 50-page brief and had referenced all of these exhibits and, sources that I was relying on. And when we got to that, final hearing, you get one shot. And basically I could tell from the moment we walked in that the judge hated us and was just like visibly rude. And, I was like, okay, this is bad. But I was able to point him to one of those, one of the documents that I referenced. And it was a therapist report where, she was testifying about how serious she thought my client's, situation was. And the judge changed his mind because he was interacting with that evidence and he believed that, and even when he didn't believe us, we were right there, but he believed that documentation and we won. And he granted them asylum. And it was something that I'd seen, actually many times as a litigator where I had been, when you're in court and if you do get the opportunity to kind of change someone's mind and change the judge's mind, they're always asking me sort of like, where in the evidence does it show me where it says this? And you need to have, that at your fingertips and they need to be able to engage with it. So my idea was, what if we could take that written documentation that we file and make it easier for the judge to access that case you cited, that, therapist report, that factual evidence. And so that was how the idea for Clearbrief started.
That's fascinating. And what a story. My gosh. So you did so much for that family. Were a lot of your cases like that?
Well, that was the first asylum case that I'd ever done. And so, it's been very cool because actually now at Clearbrief, we've created workflows that are being used for pro bono asylum cases. And we actually powered a clinic here in Washington State back, in January for MLK Day, where over 115 families were helped and assisted at that with our AI tool. So That's one of the most exciting things now is that I sort of get to do that at scale and help lawyers, help others at scale.
Yeah, lawyers that are doing that kind of work. I mean, that's going to be so gratifying. Obviously, there's a lot of headlines about AI in the legal industry. Some of them not so great right now. You've been in this space for a little while, longer than most, I would say. So what's at stake here for the legal industry and how they handle this sort of explosion of AI tools?
Yeah, so it's been very interesting to see, the atmosphere go from, we don't want anything to do with technology in the legal profession. Like when I started my company in 2020, it was still, we actually changed the domain to buy the clearbrief.com domain because we were like, .ai is too scary. Lawyers won't like that. And so, just to show how dramatically though attitudes have changed, I do think that where we are now in 2025, we are really seeing lawyers viewing AI competency in order knowing how to use AI for drafting or just as part of your legal practice, there is much more of an acceptance that it's an essential skill. However, there's still very many people who haven't had enough training or understanding of the technology. And so on about I would say a daily basis, we're seeing new cases come out where lawyers have tried to use tools like ChatGPT for legal research. And actually, OpenAI just announced, that they're attempting to sort of block its use for legal research and that sort of thing by non-professionals.
Is that because it hallucinates or because it gets things wrong, or like what's the why there?
Well, that's interesting. I don't think we always know the why, but I would say some people are speculating that it's actually because they want to sort of direct, that kind of usage towards their partners and other tools that they are invested in. So, we'll see. But definitely there's been a lot of backlash about people using it, and it's creating fake citations. It's just completely making up lies about what the evidence says. And so relying on that in a litigation setting it's very damaging, not only for those individuals who are having their careers ruined, they're being sanctioned. The sanctions are not, small. Sometimes we've seen like, okay, $2,000 sanction, like still significant, but we're seeing now like $20,000, $40,000 sanctions. We're seeing lawyers who are having to withdraw the representation of that client, and who have to. One judge basically said you have to write a letter to all your clients telling them about this mistake you made, and people are trying different things to punish the lawyers to try to deter this bad behavior. One thing that I think is kind of interesting though is that we've always had this problem, and that's sort of why I started the company as well too, where one of the earliest sort of workflows that we had was around checking mistakes and finding mistakes in your citations.
Oh, like just citing the wrong case law or citing the wrong thing in your. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's actually like it's been pretty common. And the kind of corrective for that has always been that we have an adversarial system, and the other side's lawyer is going to absolutely destroy you for citing to the wrong case, or telling the judge the case stands for this, and it really doesn't. But those are kind of like honest mistakes in a way, like, or just kind of things that we knew to anticipate. Mm-hmm. The challenge with the generative AI mistakes that we're seeing in litigation is that they're so weird and quirky. They're very hard for the human eye to catch on your own. Oh. So like, I'll give you an example. Like one of the sanctions cases was in the MyPillow litigation, and the attorneys in that case filed a brief with all different types of hallucination mistakes. Some of them were totally fake case. The case doesn't exist. But some of them were things like, it was a real case and it really stood for that proposition. And great, if you were a judge reading it, you'd be like, wow, this is great law. The problem was the AI had replaced one of the numbers in the formatting of the citation so that it looked like it came from a different circuit. And so you could easily make that mistake of like, oh yeah, this is a real case. Yep. You look it up and you kind of skip to see that, oh, it wasn't in the Seventh Circuit, it was in the Ninth Circuit, and that's not actually binding in your jurisdiction. We're also seeing, courts that this has already happened a handful of times, where the court doesn't catch the mistake, and they're putting it in their opinion, and they're putting these fake cases that they're relying on it.
Oh, wow.
And so that becomes part of our precedent. And the next person who comes to rely on this case, we're like, oh, what was the reasoning? They cited this case of apple versus orange. Like, I can't seem to find that one anywhere. Like, there's downstream problems that we're starting to see. And it's very tricky to catch these things actually without some technology. So that's really that's what Clearbrief is designed to do, to be this kind of extra set of eyes to check over systematically so that you're never filing something that has, a weird mistake in it, whether it's from AI or just human.
Or human. So how does that work? How does your system work? Like, what are you integrated with? How does it function?
Yeah. So one of the benefits, I think, of being a startup that, I founded it before generative AI in 2020. So we have a number of tools that are custom built. They're not, just layered on top of an external large language model. And so it basically kind of like reads your Word document, and it sits inside Word. and it interacts with it. And it's like, oh, this string of text, this is a case. Boom. We partner with LexisNexis. We can automatically display that case. And we're going to flag for you, hey, this, you're missing a period here. This, this needs to be italicized. This is the wrong number. And it will flag, oh, this doesn't seem like this case says what you're saying it says.
Oh, wow. So it can actually dive into the argument and say, this maybe is a flawed argument.
Yeah, I would say, it's actually like even more like looking at like sort of, okay, you're telling the judge that, if they go to this page, they'll see text that's similar to this text.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, say that it's sort of independently like understanding deeply the nuances, but that's kind of what a judge does. If you say the sky is blue, the judge expects they go to that document and it's going to say the sky is blue. If it says the sky is greenish gray, it's like, okay, is that blue? I don't know. Like, it gets further and further from the truth that you're trying to prove to the court. So that's what Clearbrief is designed to sort of flag for you. And then it will also suggest other places in the facts that might be a better proof point or could better help prove your argument.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so that's sort of how the checking over part. But when Gen AI came on the scene, so I've kind of taken a different approach as a product leader because I talk with so many lawyers and judges and, Clearbrief were used by government agencies and just like all across the profession. And the one, constant was I was always hearing how people were very frustrated with ChatGPT and prompting. And the lawyers, especially litigators, it's like, I have something due. I can't like just go back and forth and chat with this thing all day to get it right. So my philosophy has been, look, if we're going to give them Gen AI, we need to make it something that it's, a button that they can press. And we have very curated generative AI tools. So for example, our timeline tool, you can dump in, thousands of documents, press a button. It gives you a timeline with citations that are hyperlinked in your Word document. So we're solving another problem, which is, okay, I'm not the only one who's signing this brief. I need someone else to look at it. How do I make them feel comfortable that they're not going to get sanctioned?
That's great. Wow. Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about, you're a tech founder, lawyer by trade, but tech founder now. You've successfully raised money for your company. Talk a little bit about that process, what that's looked like for you. You're one of very few women who is leading an AI company that has successfully raised money. What do you think? What advice would you have maybe for others who are pursuing that? And then a little bit about your experience.
Sure. So, I think everything that I say has to be like taken with the caveat of, I was, fundraising for my company back in like 2020, 2021, which was like notoriously a boom period for, being able to raise seed rounds. And so that's actually probably my first point is just remember, it's actually a lot more about what's happening in the macro environment than it is about you personally, actually. So if there's a time when, capital is flowing freely and there's a lot of excitement in the market, it's going to just overall be an easier process and time to fundraise. But I would say my biggest tip would be to build as much traction as you possibly can before you go out to fundraise. So I think sometimes we have these unrealistic expectations that we see, in the news, like, how did this person, they just have an idea written on a napkin and they were able to raise, 20 million from VCs. Sight unseen. Well, some people are coming with, for example, a history of successful companies that they started and exits. If you're a first-time founder like I am, that is you're going to have a tougher time because they don't know you. Like you've worked at companies, you've had a lot of maybe success in other areas, but starting a company is a very specific thing and it is brutal. So VCs are really looking for, okay, great. Anyone can say that they have a great idea. Anybody can, make a great slide deck. What have you done? What kind of, what work are you putting into this? So just like as one example, and I was doing this kind of, without compensation, right? Like you're starting out and in the early days, I would spend my time going out and networking and trying to meet with a lot of different lawyers to make sure that I was validating the problem I wanted to solve. And so I had to kind of like use my network, find different litigators. I had a spreadsheet that where I would note like our interview discussion points. And so that by then I could actually say to the next investor I talked to, yeah, I've talked to, I think it was like around 200 people or something.
Wow.
Where by the, a few months in, and that's showing them a few things. It's like, okay, wow, you have a list of maybe potential like customers who could try this out. You have, you're out there. You're not just kind of waiting for the money to start building. So I think that's one thing, is make it something like that de-risks it as much as possible for them. And yeah, you really just have to kind of steel yourself for insane amounts of rejection. And that part is so, so hard. And I don't know like how I continue to survive. And it's like, if you want to be in the startup world, like there's just going to be so many people who don't understand your idea, who don't believe in you, who think it's crazy that you're trying to do something different. So as much as possible, you just sort of have to have that conviction, and be a little bit stubborn. If you you may not, feel like actually after months into it that you're following the right idea. But for me, I was like, I've done this for a decade. Like I have written so many briefs and I know this problem is not solved. I know the tools that are out there are not doing a good enough job. So that helped me when people would say to me like, well, doesn't like, Westlaw or Lexis, one of these big companies, don't they already do what you're trying to do? And I could be like, well, here's exactly what they do. And here's all the gaps. And no, it doesn't actually solve the bigger problem. And
so you were doing it in practice. You were saying like, I've been there, done that, and I wanted this tool, and that's why I built it, is essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I just always had a lot of conviction in my idea. And so I think it really starts with making sure that you're fundraising and pursuing the right idea that you have a lot of passion and conviction for, because that's actually also what they're really looking to see. And what traction can you demonstrate for them?
Interesting. Well, let's flip that concept on its head then. If you were investing, maybe you are, but if you were investing in AI startups right now, there's also a lot of them. I was at a founders event the other day and we went around the table. I think there were 20 companies represented there and every single one of them was AI. So there's just a lot going on. Yeah. What would you be looking for? And what would maybe some red flags be for you if you were potentially putting your own money behind?
So I would really want to see that they have sales, they have revenue traction, that they know how to sell their product, and at least that they have a path to how they are going to differentiate themselves in whatever market they're selling into. And I think it's really important to be able to show that you're able to bring something that OpenAI or Anthropic can't easily replicate. So, for example, Clearbrief, we have a very unique sort of position in the market where because first of all, our tools are delivered as a Microsoft Word add-in, and we're very deep, like already embedded in their workflow. We have a lot of workflows and sort of tools that are not generative AI. So the Gen AI that we bring in is, very useful and helpful, but it's not the only thing that we're doing. I think it's very risky for companies to only be sort of, just a layer on top of a large language model without really adding their own sort of unique, workflows. And I do think that we're seeing this challenge in the legal space, for example, where there were so many companies that started out as sort of, this is a more friendly way to use, ChatGPT, and that was the main thing that they offered, or this is a legal specific version of ChatGPT. Well, it turns out like OpenAI is actually selling directly to law firms now, and Anthropic is selling directly to law firms. And so if you're then trying to compete with the model creators, that's very, very tough. So you have to do something that they are not able to do because Gen AI isn't a good solution for that particular problem. So yeah, those are some of the things I'd be thinking about.
So it's almost a niche within a niche that you're kind of going after. It's not just the legal industry in general, but it's like this specific thing that is a pain point for folks.
Exactly. Like we're focused on litigators, and within that, there's a lot of document workflows that generative AI sucks at. Like one example is we cover, for example, creating your exhibits. That those are the things where when I've written this long brief or motion, and I say, oh, look at page 3 of this 85-page document. for this evidence. And oh, look at, this other 150-page document. And at the end of that, I have to actually create exhibits that will just include those specific pages. For different reasons, it's tough for ChatGPT to sort of slice and dice, documents and turn them from PDFs into Word and back and add numbering and do it with the level of certainty that you need. You don't want any of that Gen AI creativity with some of these tasks. So another thing to maybe think about, I read a great, piece this week that was talking about Canva and how they've done this really well, where a lot of what Canva does is not Gen AI. I use it probably like once a week or, multiple times a day sometimes. And they have tools that, help you with editing, help you, with images and all sorts of things. And they do have some very specific Gen AI tools, but, the core of what they're delivering is quite unique. And they're able to kind of sprinkle in the Gen AI for certain features that have quite an impact and are great. But the core of their product is actually very capital efficient to run and delivers a lot of value without even needing the large language model.
What advice would you have for women who are looking to become investors right now? Like, are there some spaces that are getting you really excited about what's going on? And like, let's just say, you sell this company in a couple of years and you've got all this capital laying around, you want to invest in some companies. What are you going to be looking at?
Yeah, I think as women, we tend to be driven sometimes by things that we are most comfortable with. And actually, I think that's a good sentiment. In general, when you're investing, invest in a space that you know and understand well.
That's a Warren Buffett thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And for example, anytime I talk to like someone in legal tech, I kind of instantly know just from my gut whether a lawyer would use it, what the challenges would be from that lawyer persona and in the way the tool works. So you have a lot of knowledge that from your career path and your life path that can help you sort of identify potential, strong investments. But I think that's why AI is kind of tough, because I think we sometimes are like, I don't know about AI, I'm going to stay out of that. So I would say, try to look for, those things that I was talking about in terms of, are there indicators like sales traction? Are there things that are just, very unique that you understand enough about large language models to know, this won't be easy for a large language model to sort of easily replicate. That's what I'd be thinking about it. In terms of like overall spaces, I think, climate tech is very interesting.
One of the things that you said to me before and in previous conversations was you heard no a lot. You heard no a lot early on. And you sort of hinted at this earlier that, you have to get comfortable with rejection. So how did you not internalize that negativity and just give up? Like, what was it that sort of got you through that period when you were getting so much rejection?
Yeah, I think at a certain point, my competitive drive kicked in, and I could very clearly see why they were wrong in some of the rationales that I got back. So that's a good tip. Maybe is to always ask. Sometimes people just are so stung by the rejection where you're just like, I never want to talk to you again. But I really tried to dig in and ask, well, why are you saying no? Why doesn't this seem like the right investment now? And so like I remember I had one investor tell me, well, I talked with this, we talked for a long time with this, lawyer. He does commercial contracts, and he just didn't see the value in what you're doing. And I'm like, this is a litigation product. Like, you're not for commercial talking to the right.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like I'm good. Like, it helps you kind of process it by just being like, okay, they really don't understand. The next time I have a conversation, I'm going to, make sure that I tell them, don't talk to, if you ask your commercial, transactional, friends who just do commercial contracts, they're not going to understand the nuances of this. This is for litigators. And so, you have to learn from every no. And I think that's how maybe I processed it and dealt with it is just see it as, look, there's nothing I can do about that. And sometimes people do come back because they see, oh, you didn't just shrivel up and die when I said no. Like, you actually kept going, and there's nothing more satisfying than, sort of proving them wrong.
Well, and then winning them back on the other side. I mean, that's really interesting too. I've always sort of lived by the mantra that feedback is a gift. and it doesn't matter necessarily how it comes to you, but if you can learn from it, then it's a gift. So yeah,
absolutely. And actually, one more thing I'll say is like you have to have people that you can vent to who understand the space. And so one of my like early, mentors, Mark Britton, he's amazing.
I love Mark.
Yeah,
he's the nicest guy.
He's wonderful. And so he was actually, one of the first sort of investors who understood what I was trying to do and believed in the company, and became one of my earliest, investors and advisors. And but he actually, I think, basically said no. Kind of the first time I talked to him, he was like, I don't really invest in. I don't do legal tech. Like I'm always going to say no. So don't be offended. I'm like, okay. And anyway, eventually having him kind of in my corridor was so helpful, because when I got a rejection, I could talk it through with someone who could help me contextualize it. And also just, my good friends who would, boost you up and help you.
Well, it's lonely, right? Like it's lonely to be a startup founder. And especially when you're getting that kind of rejection, having somebody who you can call and say, hey, have you been here? That's really helpful.
Exactly. And it's funny because it's nothing new. It's just sometimes you need to go through it and experience it to, you can go in knowing, there's investors are just pretty much always going to say no to you. That's the norm. I mean, it's just most investors make very few investments. And so statistically, they're highly unlikely to say yes. It doesn't matter. You can hear that day in and day out, and other people can tell you that. And you still get your hopes up. And so it's kind of like one of those things, you just have to go through it and see whether you can handle this life, because even if you get some initial funding, then you have to go back and do it again often. And your whole experience of going out and selling is full of rejection. So it's just something that you develop a muscle for it.
No, I love that. That's such great advice, Jackie. Thank you. So all of this, you're running your company, you're selling, you're raising money, you've got a lot going on. Where do you go to find joy? What makes you happy? What's your sort of zen?
Yeah, so I'm really happy. I recently moved to Mercer Island. Before that, living in Seattle, though, too, I would go to the Arboretum a lot. But I am loving just being able to go into the woods very easily. Like, there's just something that is really filling my cup lately about that. And just it energizes me. It brings me some focus and some peace. To just be, seeing, animals and having such an easy access to nature. I think it's so necessary if you are like running a tech company, to just ground you and kind of take you. You're staring at a screen most of the day. You're talking about, robots all day. I want to see a squirrel, that is how I like to, end my day.
You want to see a squirrel. Well, there's a beautiful view. Y'all can't see it, but it is stunning here, and you can see nature for sure. You're also a musician though, right?
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I'm also a musician. I love singing. I have a jazz group that I perform with from time to time. So, and I've tried to really bring that in actually to my legal tech stuff. So I'm always kind of, I did something earlier this year that was one of probably my highlights of the whole year, which was, I got asked to perform for in front of the ABA Tech Show to kind of kick off the startup showcase, and I sang a parody to Defying Gravity, and it was like very like over the top and extra, and it was about startups and made fun of tech bros, and it was good.
Is there a video of that?
There is a video, and actually, like there were legal tech press in the audience, and Law 360 ended up actually writing an article about it. They were like, "This is so bizarre," but they were like, "Our theater kids,
are also startup founders."
Like, what are they doing at the law? Like, theater kids, are they influencing the legal tech scene? Like, anyway,
theater kids can do anything. I think that's the takeaway here.
I mean, it's served me well. So I think that brings me a lot of joy, just to be able to, be a little bit outspoken and quirky and use my musical background to spice up my startup work.
I think it also, being a musician myself, you're so much more comfortable on stage if you've performed like that, that when you're pitching or when you're, talking to people on a stage, I don't know, I don't get nervous for that at all. And I
Yeah,
would imagine it would be
I agree. I think it helps. Although I am surprised sometimes I still randomly get nerves for different types of speaking engagements. Like this week I was in DC and I spoke at this amazing conference for Supreme Court litigators. And these are like the most elite group of litigators. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling it. Like I thought I was immune, but these are kind of like my heroes of but it went very well. So
I'm sure it did, but I can understand why that would, maybe get you a little
Yeah.
bit. It's probably good, right? A little bit of nerves puts you on your spot. Well, Jackie, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for chatting with me. And good luck with everything. I'm really excited to see where you all end up.
Thank you so much. This was super fun. And thanks for spreading the word about female founders.
Absolutely.
It's doable.
It is. It is. That's the great takeaway.